I'm Rick with Rick's Restorations in Las Vegas, and I'm the guy that can restore anything. The pawn guys have been bringing me things for years, and they're trying to stump me one way or the other, and it still hasn't happened.
Rick Dale's sudden fall from fame was shocking, especially for a man who once stood at the center of one of the most beloved shows. One moment, he was transforming forgotten relics into masterpieces on American Restoration.
How's it going?
Going all right.
Okay.
A little slow going, but I think we're getting it a little bit.
We're out a little more than we should be. Okay, let me see the hammer you used. The hammerhead, see the hammer? See how it's rounded like that? But this hammer is not so good on the outside.
And the next, he was gone without explanation, leaving fans confused and the workshop empty. As the cameras moved on, so did the spotlight, and what followed was the collapse of everything he had built. But was it truly just bad luck? Or was there something deeper behind the scenes? Join us as we unveil what really happened to Rick Dale after American Restoration. The man behind the machines. Many fans of American Restoration have been asking about their idol, Rick Dale. Some know what happened to him, others have no clue. But there's something most people seem to be getting wrong about the whole show and what it has to do with Rick. Speaking of which, how does one even talk about American Restoration without first shedding some light on the main protagonist? The whole story began with Rick Dale's ceaseless liking for restoring old items when he was around the age of 9, as his father encouraged him, along with his brother, to fix things instead of demanding new ones. His father once made him fix a dilapidated bicycle found in the dumpster, and he actually enjoyed doing it. Since money was scarce for the family, the elder Dale was all about fixing or making things work, and he wanted to teach his children the same philosophy. Since then, Rick has been fascinated by how things work. In his words, he loves taking things apart, and he loves putting things back together. Things began to change. When he learned that he could make money from this skill, Rick began to look for vintage stuff he could restore and then sell. And it worked like magic. Back during his struggling days in the early 80s, he invested some money restoring a vintage Coke machine that he bought, and then sold it for 3 times the amount he put into it at the Rose Bowl flea market in Pasadena. There was a demand for old Coke machines at gas pumps overseas at the time, and later on, Americans wanted them too, and they were more than willing to pay more for them. With this, Rick had found his purpose.
Hey, wait, hold on. Let's put this over there. Throw that on up there. How you been, bud?
Doing good, man.
Good to see you. Where'd you get this?
Someone came in the shop with it. 1950s BMC heavy-duty tractor.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. What do you want to do with it? You want to restore it?
He proceeded to go around the country doing business this way until he was able to set up his own shop. Rick was the kind of expert who put a lot of attention on details. He would spend time researching what he could about a piece he was working on, so as to restore it to its original glory and have an idea of its value. Rick was the perfect example of someone who took pride in his work, and things went well for him. For a while, at least. In 1993, he went through a divorce. Everyone knows what comes with a divorce. Alimony is no joke, especially in the United States. But Rick was a resilient fellow. Even though he sold his shop, he still put pieces he restored for sale right in front of his house. A classic example of a real hustler. He later found the right partner in his second wife named Kelly, who specialized in marketing. His wife told him to do the work, and she'd make the money. Needless to say, that was exactly how it played out. But things were about to change even further. When Rick re-established his restoration business in 2007, Left Field Pictures, the people who produced History Channel's reality TV series Pawn Stars, approached him to ask if he'd like to pawn the gas tank that he had listed in a printed publication. He wasn't interested at all, but he did express his interest in being called upon as an expert antique restorer and metal artist in the show. With the kind of knowledge Rick has, the producers didn't even think twice, and immediately took him up on that. He became a recurring guest in the series, first appearing in the Time Machines episode in its first season in 2009. It didn't take long after that for Left Field Pictures to move forward. This was the moment that Rick was catapulted to fame. But how did he handle it?
The bike itself, 1927 Indian Scout. This was the bike of choice for the Wall of Death. We put a lot of time and effort into reviving it from its past life. Let's get this thing fired up!
The show that changed everything. American Restoration premiered on the History Channel in October 2010. The timing made sense since the network had just recently found enormous success with Pawn Stars, which had launched the previous year from just down the Las Vegas Strip at the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. American Restoration used a similar framework to Pawn Stars, but with a different emotional core. Instead of the usual heckling over prices during transactions, it was about transformation. So there was no buying and selling, but everything was about saving and restoring. And that distinction mattered enormously to the people who watched. Now, probably even Rick Dale himself did not expect that he'd be a natural for television. Of course he was enthusiastic, but he remained level-headed, not going over the top. Having gathered immense knowledge from a very young age, Rick could easily explain technical restoration processes in a way that made them accessible to viewers who had never held a wrench in their lives. The man had opinions, he had his standards, and he sure as anything had genuine emotion when a piece came out looking exactly the way he intended. Viewers could easily see it on his face that this wasn't just a job to him. It was something closer to a calling. It came as no surprise when the show became a hit. Season after season, viewers tuned in just to watch Rick and his team take something destroyed and make it whole again. The before and after reveals became the heart of the show. It was the emotional climax of every episode. There's no other way to say it. American Restoration was a success story. It ran for 6 full seasons, making Rick Dale a recognizable face in television. It brought customers from across the country who wanted to get their prized vintage items restored by the people they'd seen on television. The shop in Las Vegas became something of a tourist destination. People would stop in just to see the place, to maybe catch a glimpse of Rick or his son Tyler, who brought a different kind of energy to the shop. Some people stopped just to feel connected to something they'd watched on their television screens every week. For a restoration shop in Las Vegas, it was an extraordinary run, which is why what happened next hit fans so hard.
Oh my word! Oh my word! Oh gosh, it looks so good.
That's awesome.
For them to walk in and the look on their face and the happiness as they walk away, that's it. That's what it does for me.
The disappearance. Nobody explained. After 6 seasons and dozens of episodes, American Restoration came back for its 7th season in 2016. Viewers tuned in with enthusiasm, expecting to see the familiar faces, the familiar workshop, and the familiar format they had come to love. But what they got instead was something completely different. Rick Dale and his crew were gone. The entire crew that fans had watched for years had been removed from the show without so much as a goodbye episode, a final reveal, or any acknowledgement that they had ever existed. Of course, the TV series American Restoration had been canceled after 5 years, much to the dismay of its loyal viewers from all 87 countries where it was aired, with an average of 2.9 million viewers each week. Many were surprised by this move from the network. No official statement was issued regarding the matter, so naturally viewers began to wonder and speculate about the cause of the cancellation. Initially, fans were appeased when it was announced that they were rebooting the show. But it was only after the show started again that they belatedly realized that Rick Dale and his crew wouldn't be part of it. Speculations arose, and the one who suffered most was Rick, as he was put in a bad light when people were trying to understand why he was effectively fired. Some people said he had become difficult to work with. Others said that he demanded a higher fee, while some claimed that his work had become shoddy and that he lost sight of what had made his business a success, which was his attention to detail. What made matters worse was that Rick had promised to help an 85-year-old man restore his 1950 jukebox for $4,000. He didn't deliver that promise. While the machine's exterior looked well, it wasn't functioning properly. Nobody really understood what happened to the man they had watched for years. But it didn't take long for an emotional Rick to take to social media and upload a video thanking his fans for their support over the years, saying there will only be one Rick's restoration, which is basically American restoration. Rick's disappearance only started to make sense after he asked his fans to go to the American Restoration website to share how they felt about the show. Viewers belatedly realized their idol didn't leave on his own, he was fired, along with his crew. One fan initiated a petition to the network to keep Rick in the show, but it only attracted a few signatures, so nothing came of it. The 7th season premiered in January 2016 with 13 episodes, featuring 5 restoration shops such as Bodie Stroud Industries, Dale Waxler's Wheels Through Time, Andy Bowman's Monkey Business, Steve's Restorations and Hot Rods, and Bob Halliday's Bob's Garage. However, some things can't be changed. With Rick on the show, it was successful. But without him, the show was not even renewed for another season after the 7th. While some viewers acknowledged that it was a good show, it wasn't as successful as the first 6 seasons. So what happened to the show after Rick left?
Oh, God, that's great!
The best part of my job is the customer smile.
Wow.
That is the most gratification I possibly could get.
The permanent closure. When something stops yielding results despite best efforts, there's only one thing to do about it. Rick's restorations in Las Vegas, partly on the oxygen of television exposure. It would be an understatement to say the shop merely benefited from the publicity. It practically became dependent on it. When a person is the face of a popular show on the History Channel, they don't have to advertise. Customers would find them. And in the case of American Restoration, they come from across the country with their vintage items, their family heirlooms, their pieces of personal history, because they had seen what Rick could do, and they trusted him with their precious things. The show functioned as an ongoing weekly advertisement that reached millions of people for free. So when it was canceled, that pipeline of customers closed. It didn't even have to happen overnight. There was residual interest, the kind that follows any television personality for a period after their show ends. Reruns still aired. Fans still remembered. But the steady stream of new customers who had discovered the shop through current programming dried up in a way that the business simply couldn't sustain. Without the television platform driving new business, there was no easy way to keep the numbers working. In the years following the end of Rick's involvement with American Restoration, Rick's Restorations permanently closed its doors. For fans, this was like a second punch right in the guts. First, he was removed from the show. Then, the shop that had been the heart of everything he'd built was gone. The place where so many incredible transformations had been captured on film, where Tyler had learned the craft alongside his father, where customers had wept at the sight of their restored treasures. That place simply ceased to exist. Online, fans mourned. Some held out hope that Rick would reopen somewhere else, that this was just a temporary setback before some kind of comeback. Others began to piece together a more sobering picture of what had actually happened. Because the closure of the shop wasn't the whole story. The shop may be gone, but where is Rick now?
From Rick's Restorations. We are all familiar with our favorite local celebrities from Rick's Restorations, Kelly and Rick Dale. Well, they sort of outgrew their old location on Commerce, and they've moved here to Mesquite Avenue, to a much larger piece of property.
Where things stand. The question fans always come back to is simple. Where is Rick Dale now? The answer is that he has continued to exist, but outside the spotlight, as most people do when the cameras stop following them around. He has maintained some connection to his fans through social media. He has expressed, at various points, the frustration and disappointment that anyone would feel after being removed from a platform they had built and watching the business that platform supported close its doors. But he has also, in the way of people who survive hard seasons, kept going. The restoration world did not cease to exist when Rick's Restorations closed. The skills Rick spent decades developing did not disappear. Whether there is a next chapter that brings Rick Dale back into public view in a meaningful way remains to be seen. In February 2021, Rick shared his plans of giving tutorials on the restoration process, Q&A sessions, and working on projects with enthusiasts. In June of that same year, he opened another YouTube channel, Restoration Ricks, and posted videos of what he's been doing at the shop. It can be said that everything is going well in Rick's personal life, if it's based on social media postings. Rick and his wife, Kelly, celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary in November 2021, and it appeared they were having the time of their lives with their children and grandchildren. So, what about Rick's wife, Kelly? Aside from being a successful Las Vegas realtor with 20 years of experience, Kelly established a small business called My Best Foot Forward. Her shop was located in Las Vegas, and she said that no job is too big or too small for them when it comes to custom embroidery, as well as laser cutting and engraving. Some of the work they did included engraved boards and laser-cut wood for family or business signage, gifts, giveaways, and souvenirs. They also specialized in customizing apparel and upholsteries. Kelly has also set up a mobile DIY studio in which friends and families could have a fun time at a Vegas sign party. After choosing the sampler designs from the website, Kelly and her team would bring all the materials and tools needed for the participants to put everything together, paint the design, stain it, and apply the hanging hardware for the sign. As for Rick Dale children, his daughter Allie married her best friend in March 2019 and has a career in insurance. Tyler has his automotive customization shop called Daily Grind Fabrication, and he also started making custom rings in between big jobs, as he admitted to being inspired by the Lewis brand in making non-traditional rings. It's available on his Etsy shop, The Tyler Dale Project. His engagement to his girlfriend of 9 years was made known through Instagram. Bradley also became engaged to his girlfriend in 2020. He was part of the show for 5 seasons before he established his own business called CleanWorks Mobile Media Blasting in Las Vegas, in which they offered dustless blasting services for graffiti removal, cleaning equipment and tanks, and paint and rust removal. He said he worked hard to get his business going without taking out loans or handouts from anyone. Much to the delight of his fans, Rick appeared as a guest in 2019 and 2020 in History Channel's Pawn Stars, when his expertise was called upon by Rick Harrison. However, many are still hoping to see Rick in his own reality TV show again, doing what he does best, as fans often left comments with that sentiment on their Facebook page, as they really fell in love with the show and Rick's restorations. But does Rick really need American restoration? The legacy of what he built. When talking about the rise and fall of Rick and a reality TV star, there is something that often gets lost in the narrative, particularly when the fall is steep and the complications are messy, And that is the simple fact of what existed before everything went wrong. Rick Dale built something real. He took a skill that most people do not possess, for objects that most people would throw away, and he turned it into a business and eventually into television that reached millions of people and made them care about restoration in a way they probably never had before. That is genuinely valuable. American Restoration introduced an entire generation of viewers to the idea that old things have stories worth preserving, that a rusted pump from 1940 or a faded sign from a diner that closed decades ago carries within it something irreplaceable, a connection to the past that no reproduction can replicate. Rick Dale spent years on television making that argument, week after week, reveal after reveal, and he made it persuasively enough that people listened. The fans who loved the show still love it. They still watch the reruns. They still share their favorite episodes online. They still remember the specific items that meant the most to them. The military vehicles brought in by veterans. The childhood toys restored for people reaching back toward something precious. The carnival rides brought back to life for another generation of kids to enjoy. That legacy does not disappear because the business closed or because the network made a decision that hurt. It is built into the record of what was created and shown, into the people who watched it and were moved by it, and into the craftsmen who learned something from seeing Rick Dale's work and carried it forward. As to whether Rick will return to TV shows, the landscape of television has changed enormously since American Restoration was at its peak. Streaming platforms have created new opportunities for niche content that might not have thrived on cable network schedules. If anything, in a world that has become increasingly disposable and digital, the appeal of someone who can take a broken, forgotten thing and make it whole again is more powerful than ever. Will Rick Dale return to any reality television shows? Or is he better off as he is? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.